Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for another week of the 247 Real Talk podcast. For those of you who believe, as I do, in God the Father Almighty, this is Holy Week. This is the week when we commemorate the sacrifice made by Jesus Christ, crucified, dead, and buried, descend into hell. And Easter Sunday is when we celebrate the resurrection. It is a time for reflection, especially with what's going on in the United States, in Washington, the world today, of who we are, whose we are, and what we're really doing, and what it's really saying to our Creator. This episode, I'm going to reflect a little bit on this Holy Week and its environment and this heavy cloud that's above us. So sit back and relax, and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm right back. My hand hit the button there. So let me just start off by telling you my rehab continues to go well on my repaired right knee is progressing slowly but surely, and my left knee is deteriorating pretty badly. I'm wearing a brace in it almost every place I go. It's a prescription brace. I think I showed it last time for those of you looking at YouTube. This is the one I have now, and then I believe they're gonna make a custom brace that can withstand what I need until later in the year. So let's get right into it, because this will not be a long episode. It's Wednesday, April 16 at 10:39 p.m. as I look at the clock, 10:40 p.m. behind my camera. It's been up and down weather week in New York. We're finally beginning to feel spring in a certain way, meaning that, like today, for instance, it was 50-something degrees, but it was so windy that it felt like 40-something. But I believe by Saturday, we're going to almost touch 80, actually. Then, of course, it's going to go down again. But I do believe we're getting into the cycle of spring and our segue into warmer weather. So getting back to my introduction, as I reflected on what we do this week, those of us who believe in our Creator, who believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and those of us who believe in Jesus Christ, the Holy Son of the Lord, and who believe that He came to this earth, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried, that He descended into hell the third day, He rose again from the dead and ascended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. For those of us who believe, we know that man appoints and God disappoints. We have watched over the last few months different characters in this country appointing. And what they appoint breaks people, destroys homes, removes the ability to earn an income, rips families apart, decent, law-abiding families who don't happen to have immigration status. Rather than provide them a path, they rip the families apart, where the parent is sent back, or the husband is sent back and the wife is left here, and they send them back. I read one story, I think I referred to it before, of a couple who had been here 30 years. They were in the upper 50s and they got deported. Upstanding residents who did not have legal status. They actually went through the entire legal process of changing their status, and there was some mail or some mix-up, and they missed an interview, an appointment, and their case ended up getting closed. But they continued to follow the cadence of reporting weekly or whatever it was to the immigration, to update their status, to let them know they were here, and to make sure that there was a record of their clean record. And then we had a change in policy administration. They went in as usual to do the right thing, and they were detained and deported. They came here, I believe, with no kids. They have 3 kids in their 20s and 30s. Their entire life is here. I forgot where they're from, but they were shipped back to some place where they may not have any relatives. And in their upper 50s, like many places, if it's the Caribbean, retirement age is 55. So they don't even have a way to earn a serious income. And I reflected on this week as, as we read biblically, God says, love thy neighbor as thyself. I thought about those who are billionaires now who have gotten there on the backs of people, including immigrants. Many of them hiring immigrants and companies to build their structures and not paying them. Many of them getting rich over the investment or the purchase of their services from immigrants, include all citizens, all Americans, but including immigrants. And then finding it okay to fire over 100,000 people, rip up contracts and replace those contracts with their own businesses, watch the stock market drop and invest knowingly, making billions more. And I thought to myself, many people will talk about you and how rich you are, your beautiful properties, your 4 or 5 properties you have a choice of going to, domestically and internationally, your private jets, your private yachts, your caviar, your best champagnes. But what does it all mean? And I've been in a few places where I've seen really poor people, and those really poor people were extremely happy in their circumstances. They had learned to live with what they have and appreciate life in the most simple, unpolluted way. A couple of days ago, someone, maybe yesterday or the day before, I found out someone I knew had retired about 2 years ago. He was in his yard gardening. He came in from gardening, chatted with his wife. His wife went to cook dinner. Well, a couple of hours later, while they were chatting, he got up to go to the bathroom. He took a little long. She went there, found him on the floor gasping for breath. Ambulance responded. He couldn't be saved. A lot of times when we see these things happen to people, we wonder every thought we can in our mind. But the one thing we never really put first and foremost is whose we are and who has the right at any given time to say, time up. It is so important that we live life with compassion. As the Bible says, love thy neighbor as thyself. It is so important that we find ways to sacrifice for the benefit of others. How many of you have given something to someone in need and you watched that person accept it with such joy because it meant so much that you became extremely joyful? Your heart was just delighted. We are living in a country of time where people are firing hardworking people with no notice. People are, like I said, tearing up contracts and replacing them with their own businesses for more money. People are removing history, and people who sacrificed and belong in a part of history, they're removing everyone except their own under the guise of removing DEI. You got to remember the reality here, right? DEI was important, or still is important, because it's inclusive of women, it's inclusive of LGBTQI communities, is inclusive of people of color, is inclusive of handicapped people, is a lot broader. It's inclusive of certain people with certain illnesses. It's a lot broader than this administration has made it seem. They have taken the opportunity to remove the reference of people of color, people who made incredible contributions to this country where it is today. From places like Arlington National Cemetery, from DEI, I heard, has been removed from anywhere, the libraries in the Navy and the military. But what does that amount to? Let's look at it for what it is. If I did, as a person of color, did something amazing for this country, for everyone benefited, and I was in the military or whatever, and I am on this reference to me at Arlington National Cemetery, and I did it alongside my fellow soldier who was white. And at the end of this effort, this operation, whatever, the two people who were celebrated for saving lives, for making America great, for being everything that we needed in support of country, love, togetherness, were buried there. But the only one that got removed was the black guy's name. Well, you're using DEI to erase black history because the white guy's name remains. And please, I have many listeners now, a few thousand. My audio listeners I know are I get about 50,000. They're way more than YouTube. But I'm saying this because I know for a fact I have a very diverse base of listeners. And by now, if you've been a listener of this podcast, you know that I'm not only independent, that I grew up with every single race, creed, and color. I have friends of every race, creed, and color. And I'm sorry, but prejudice is not something that I have or use or want to be ever associated with. My point being, what is DI is being weaponized to make history seem that the only people who did anything were white people and white immigrants, right? Or white offspring, descendants of immigrants. Because if you're using DEI to say, I got a job over someone else who applied, a white person who applied, they were more qualified than I was, but I got the job because I'm a person of color, then maybe you have the conversation there about what DEI did. But if I fought alongside my brothers and sisters of every race, creed, and color, including white, and in the military, you're there where you're under fire or whatever, and the color is not important because everybody can die. And there happened to be these two people who came out who saved everyone else, and one is black and one is white. You're telling me you're removing the reference to the black guy, and that's DEI? And so I thought about all these things this week. I reflected on my dear departed mother and the lessons she taught me. One of the things that I've become better at is something she would often say, be still and know that I'm God. That's what God says. Be still and know that I'm God. There's a lot of panic and chaos in Washington right now and around, and all the tariffs and hardworking people after 30 years going back to work because their 401ks tanked. And the only people who made money are the richer people who got richer, and they're bragging about it and they're flaunting their wealth above us. And when you look at that circle that we see in Washington, they're all white. So it's not a diverse group. There's no DEI there. It's intentionally removing other races, genders, sexual orientation. It's cleansing for supremacy. I speak to many people who are despondent, who, despite the fact that I tell them to call your congressman, there's every congressman, every senator, every representative has a website. They have a number you can call. Someone will speak with you. You can lodge a complaint. You can write emails. You don't have to write letters and mail them. But I understand sometimes that's not only burdensome. I understand that it seems like every day we have less and less time in the day to do anything else, because if we have families and kids, we're rushing around just trying to survive and make ends meet and give our families a decent life. And when we're done at the end of the day, we're exhausted, and we might say, I want to be part of the solution, but I'm tired today, I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow turns out to be the same as today or even worse. I get it. And what I ask you to do when I ask you to share, like, and subscribe, and to reach out to me, as many of you do, and to have conversations, and let's have constructive dialogue and figure out a way forward and figure out how to stand with our brothers and sisters, every race, creed, and color that's being discriminated against or being improperly targeted and hurt by these new policies. I don't want to lose track of the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is who we are and whose we are. I once spoke to someone who I first saw was an atheist, and she said, no, I'm not an atheist. I just don't believe that there's a man up there who controls everything. And I don't get into those conversations because that's a difficult path to go down. But I basically said to them, that's because it's not a man. If we stay silent for a moment and pay attention to our own bodies, we'll realize the spirit and soul that is us, that lies within this outer dressing. And that's why when we die, the spirit moves on, but the body goes back to where it came from dust to dust. The point is, when you recognize that man appoints and God disappoints, you can try to make all the excuses you want and rationalize all you want. But I personally believe there's a couple of things. One, none of what's going on now is a surprise to God. Remember, in this life, you were given a choice for choose good or choose evil. And in many times, what people don't realize, those who choose evil, I don't know what comes after life in terms of punishment. But if you check carefully, many of the people who commit evil acts in this life, you watch them later on suffering in this life or meeting tragedy in this life. And for those of us who have faith, we understand that we are not in control. And that it's important for us to build a relationship with our God, our Creator, to protect us with long, healthy lives, to protect us with productive lives, but mostly kindness and compassion for each other. Firing 100,000 people on the spot, making yourself richer with every policy you do, erasing all the heroic and amazing things that people have that are different from you contributed to this life that even you enjoy. Inventions that were made by people of color, yet you want to erase history. You pick up the telephone, the smartphone today, but you look at its history, electricity, all these things, they are people of their ancestors. And all the people who are making the decisions today, if they look just a couple of generations back, they'll see they're bound to migrants, that their blood flows from a migrant, someone who once immigrated to this country. The difference is people of color came here involuntarily first, and then later on voluntarily, and helped build this country, whether it be on their backs involuntarily or by their bare hands voluntarily. And now we're telling them, you're not good enough to come in here. Now we're saying to people who've contributed to society, the only crime was that they're not legal. Even the ones I spoke about who followed the immigration law and the process but missed an appointment, we have no compassion. We talk about when the Europeans, when Christopher Columbus even landed in America, and there were people here already. The indigenous people, those people showed compassion. And now we go full circle and we fail to show any compassion to those who are seeking a better life and to be productive. Don't get me wrong. They need to come in the right way. They need to be vetted. Their criminal background needs to be, part of the decision. There needs to be a limit as to how many per year because there needs to be a balance. But what we're doing is wrong. Destroying people's lives, putting them into despair because you've got the power of mankind is wrong. As I said, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but someone I knew passed away about 2 days ago in his bathroom, preparing to have dinner. And when you hear these things and you get the news, it's shocking, right? But what we need to focus on is no matter what we want to think, our Creator said, my purpose for you here is done. Time up. I pray all the time for a long life so that I can be here for my kids as they grow up. But I realize that you need to pray that without ceasing because you have no control whether you see the next hour. And yet we have people in Washington living like they're immortal. We have people who have billions of dollars. What exactly do you do with billions of dollars if you're not here tomorrow? And it can happen in so many ways. We had a helicopter crash here in the Hudson in New York last week. And condolences to the family. But a whole family was wiped out in seconds. They had money. None of it matters. Not them, not husband, wife, nor children will ever get to spend any more of it. I think of Steve Jobs from Apple, billionaire, had that, I think it was the liver cancer, was not at the top of the implant list or the, donor list. Paid money and got to the top of the list. Got a donor, got a liver transplant, and still died. Man appoints, but God can disappoint. For those of you who hear my voice every week and you want to do something, but life doesn't let you. You have lives like me, hectic with kids, trying to make ends meet, working. At the end of the day, you're exhausted. And now you have to turn around and write an email to a congressman like I asked you, or find time during the day to call your representative or your congressman's office to let them know that you're paying attention and that they will not be reelected if this continues. And to lodge a complaint of the discrimination that we be subjected to, and the direction that our country is going, that's eliminating our participation, our history. I get it. Sometimes in the busyness of life, what I'm asking is a lot. And I know it's a lot because even though you see me every week on a podcast, I promise you, this is a big sacrifice. The preparation for this, the equipment, the process, and fighting through tiredness to do it every week. But it's purposeful. And I believe that it is part of who I am, my kindness, compassion, and a need to stand up and at least have a conversation and give hope by letting people know that they're not alone, that it's not just me, but there are many podcasts and advocates like me around the country who are speaking truths and hoping that at some point those people we elected because there's two sides of the aisles and they're almost evenly balanced, will stand up and push back against what's being wrongfully done against so many people. This is Holy Week. Christ died for us so that our sins are forgiven. He wiped out our sins. That gave us the opportunity to always have a new start. Even if we've lived a life of crime, as long as we're still here, we have an opportunity to switch, to change, to become an advocate and a symbol of compassion and love and upliftment. We need to do it before we don't have the time, we don't have the chance. Those of us who are feeling the pressure emotionally, financially, mentally of what's going on around us here, it's hard, me included, but rest assured, from my belief, and I stand with God the Father Almighty, there is a God. And if you stand in faith, you will make it through this fire and this storm. And you may just get to witness God saying to those who are bringing the hammer down on our heads and our lives in every direction, enough is enough. I command you to let my people go, let my people live. I am deep in thought as we move towards Good Friday. For me, a most solemn day. Sometimes I try to reflect on what Jesus Christ must have felt like being the Son of God, having the ability to wipe everyone else around him by a single raise of his finger, to stop everyone from breathing, to change his circumstances. Yet he subjected himself to beating, to being nailed on the cross, to dying on the cross, to paying for our sins, so that we would have an opportunity, doing the righteous thing, to be righteous in his eyes. Remember, he said, I go to prepare a place for you, so that you may be where I am, you may be also. I look forward to a long, healthy life. But I also look forward to God's promise that he has prepared a place for us. And those of us who choose to live a life of righteousness and doing right to each other, understand the significance of this week, and understand the significance of Good Friday and the Resurrection Sunday. Keep your hope alive. Keep your faith alive. As you watch what's going on around us and it gives you every reason to be depressed, don't be. Stand tall. As the walls crumble around you and the bricks are thrown at you and the rug is pulled out from under you and all you want to do is cower and cry and yell out and scream and lash out, stop for a moment. All ye with heavy burdens, lay them at my feet, and I will give you rest, the words of our Creator. As I come to the end of this episode, and as you come to the end of this week, those of you who know, you know. Those of you who don't know, I urge you to take stock of yourselves, to listen, to look, to read the Bible, to speak to someone who inspires you, and to figure out that you weren't here by chance or from some big explosion or for some evolution from a monkey. No, you were created in the image of God. Remember, as you go through this week, as you feel the pressures on you, as you look at your 401ks, as you look at your retirement plans dwindling, as you look at the refrigerator emptying, the bank accounts emptying, as you look at families being torn apart, as you look at husband and wives and children's crying because their They don't know what to do next because their support system is gone. As you look at someone who's your ancestor, who sacrificed and lost their life, gave their life for this country, being erased from the country's history. As you look at all that was accomplished in the civil wars, and now you watch yourself being pushed back to that time so that some human being is claiming to be more supreme. I leave you with one thing. Be still. Be still. Remember the words of our Almighty as you go into this Good Friday and as you rejoice in Resurrection Sunday. He said to you, me, and everyone who decided that He is our Creator, that He is our Father, that we believe in Him. He said very simply, be still and know that I'm God.